Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor, and we have a full slate ahead of us, and we're going to continue our focus on the impending impeachment process now announced earlier this week by Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. Joining us is a member of the Oversight and Accountability Committee, which will run point on this process, Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Larry, thanks for having me.
Earlier today, Nancy Pelosi told her friends on MSNBC that it's hogwash to suggest that she moved forward with the impeachment process without a full vote. This is a new narrative they're pushing on you, that you need to have a full vote. You've been around for a while. Is that true? Is it hogwash? I remember her moving forward with an impeachment process without a full House vote.
Oh, I mean, they didn't even have an impeachment inquiry the second time they impeached President Trump. And let's just say that again and repeat that. The second time. So you want to talk to me, they impeached him the first time on about a phone call that was above board. And the second time, just because I guess they were mad at him, the guy had 2 weeks left in office. So you tell me those weren't political. We're taking great weight in this decision. And it was the evidence that, because trust me, Larry, at the end of the day, selfishly, I want Joe Biden to be on the top of their ticket because I think he's the weakest, other than Kamala Harris, he's the weakest candidate they can field. So selfishly, I want the guy to survive until November 24. But that's not our constitutional duty. Our constitutional duty is not political. It is to investigate corruption when we find this much evidence.
Can you also shed some light on this other narrative that I'm hearing from the media and, of course, fed by the Biden White House, that this is unnecessary? You've got your committees, you've got oversight, you've got judiciary, you've got Ways and Means. You've already been having these hearings. It's unnecessary to raise the specter of impeachment. It's just political.
No, it opens up more doors and gives us more resources to investigate. So let's look at this in historical context. The Watergate break-in occurred, Larry, in June of 1972. President Nixon didn't resign until August of 74. So it was a process. They didn't find a smoking gun until deep into the investigation. So we have, right now, I believe we have a preponderance of the evidence. In other words, it's more likely than not that Hunter Biden was Joe Biden's bagman and the Biden family was peddling and selling influence and access. And if I could, could you indulge me with giving you one quick example of showing a pattern?
Please.
Okay. So you have a fella named Karim Masimov. And he was the former prime minister of Kazakhstan. He ran with a fellow named, and forgive me for these names, Kenes Rashikev. Okay, so Rashikev happened to give Hunter Biden $142,300. Nobody knows why he gave them that money, but we know the next day Hunter Biden bought a Porsche for $142,300. Now, Masimov, isn't that something?
Yeah, hell of a coincidence. I mean, talk about...
Yeah. After he wired that money, a few months later, Rashikev had dinner with Joe and Hunter Biden in Washington. Masimov, his running buddy, is in prison for 18 years for corruption. Next person, Yelena Baturina, the former First Lady of Moscow. Her husband, a fellow who since passed away, Yuri Luzkov, was the mayor. He was named by the American ambassador to Russia as one of the big problems, one of the corrupt oligarchs. Okay, he passes away. She's got loads of money. She wires Hunter Biden's companies $3.5 million. A couple months later, she has dinner with Hunter and Joe Biden. Furthermore, when Russia invaded Ukraine and a lot of the oligarchs were sanctioned by the Biden administration, she was not. Next, we'll move down to Vadim Pozharsky. Vadim Pozharsky was the right-hand man of a fella named Mykola Zlochevsky. Zlochevsky owned Burisma, an energy giant corporation in Ukraine. They hired Hunter Biden for $1 million a year to be on their board. According to the FD 1023, the form that an informant gave the information to the FBI, that Vadim and Zlochevsky wanted the Bidens to make the investigation go away because there was a guy investigating him for corruption in Ukraine.
Yeah,
that's exactly the fella that Joe Biden had fired. He got the prosecutor fired.
Yep.
And allegedly, he gave, for that effort, he gave Joe and Hunter $5 million each.
Yeah.
But after they hired him on the board, who did Vadim Pozharsky have dinner with? Joe and Hunter Biden in Washington, D.C.
That's a hell of a pattern of behavior there, Congressman, that you've laid out so succinctly. Yeah. So let me ask you something, because the argument you'll hear from them, and I'm sure you've already heard it, well, there's no evidence showing any of that money went to Joe. Oh, sure, it looks like Hunter and the brother, James Biden, they got $20 million, but Joe didn't get any. Let me put it this way. If my son and I put together a scheme to rob a bank, and we did the bank robbery, but my son kept all the money from the bank robbery, am I innocent of the bank robbery, or am I just as guilty whether I get the money or not?
Well, the Democrats like to use the word conspiracy quite a bit, and that's exactly what that would be, a conspiracy. The concept of the bagman. Most of us have watched mafia movies and such, and movies about corruption. The bagman is the front man. That was Hunter. They were smart enough not to be that stupid to where people are going to wire money to Joe Biden. But also, let's consider, Larry, the psychosis. What was Joe Biden thinking back in 2014 and 15? He thought his political career was over. Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee in 2016, which she was. She was going to win against whoever the Republicans put up against her, and she was going to be president for 8 years. He certainly wasn't going to run for president when he was 82 or 3 years old.
Right.
So he was grabbing with both hands, and that's why they got sloppy.
Yeah, well said. So the president yesterday finally spoke publicly about this. He was at a fundraiser of sorts in the D.C. area. He said, Congressman, that you Republicans are just raising the specter of impeachment because you want to shut down the government. I'm sorry, it makes no sense to me either, but maybe you get it better than I do?
I think his brain is shutting down. I mean, Larry, that is such an adolescent statement from a spoiled child. While Biden's body ages, his mind regresses like Benjamin Button. I mean, that is just not even worthy of a response.
All right.
I didn't come to Washington to shut down the government and hurt my country. I didn't come to Washington to go on some revenge tour against Democrats. I came to Washington to do the American thing to ensure that our country's stronger tomorrow than it is today. That's why I'm here. So when I hear inane bull crap like that coming out of the president of the United States, it's just like, you know what, dude, you're not even worthy of the office for saying things like that.
Something tells me that when you're back in your district in Texas, you don't say bull crap. I think it comes out a little differently, but we will leave it there for now, Congressman. Real fast, you would think this administration would be somewhat chagrined about putting pressure on the media about how they're supposed to report stories or silence stories or censor stories. Let's face it, a federal appeals court, a judge of 3 panels, just spanked them down Friday for working with social media companies to violate people's First Amendment rights. But here they are with a multi-page memo from the White House counsel's office telling reporters how they're supposed to cover this impeachment story. What is going on with these people? Why the totalitarian instinct with these Democrats?
You notice something if you can stomach it, if you turn on like MSNBC or CNN, the liberals always have to own the message. They can't have equal time because their whole, their worldview really is based on emotion and not logic. If you ever saw that horrible human being, Keith Olbermann, and he had his show, he never had an opposing view. But you had Bill O'Reilly that would have a give and take and then would oftentimes say to people, hey, you know what? I got another minute. I'm going to give you the last word. Liberals never do that. That's why they want to dominate the message. In fact, that's why there's a movement for them to remove AM radio from cars, because that is one medium they don't own.
Well said, sir. And I appreciate you and your colleagues, by the way, holding the line on that, too, as a talk radio host. Thank you, Congressman Fallon. Get back to work. There's a lot of government to oversee on your oversight committee. Thank you.
Sir, yes, sir.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Keep it here. Salem News Channel.